So now the question is what to do here. What I'm thinking is I want to have an E minor here. So I would just go with an E as a minimum and then to an F, the G to F, E to F. And here I want to do an E minor. Let's do the bass again, and then we are gonna fill up the inner voices. So what's next? We're coming to E. And what I'm thinking here is like, what if I treat this E as the 7th degree and I go to F sharp? F sharp might sound weird, but trust me, I have something in my mind that I think can work well. And then I can come to an F, and then I can come to an E. So what is happening here, as you can see, is like I'm treating this E as the 7th degree, making a chromatic movement. Why am I making a chromatic movement? That's a good question. You'll find out later. Let's move on. Here I can come to a D. Why do I come to a D? Is because it's gonna be the 3rd of the chord, so which is still nice. Then I come to C. So I might do a C major here. I still don't know, but as you can see, I'm doing like a nice, stepwise chromatic line, but again, here chromatic, then going down. Maybe here I do G. So let's listen to it and see how it is working. Let's only do first violins and cello. As you can see, it is sounding really well. Let's come to the next. What I would do is I may go back to C, and here, because I'm having B, C, I may again go to G, and then I'm gonna repeat the G. Maybe I'll just stay with the G here. Do you know what is good is like, can you imagine if I'm having a G and I'm having the B, which is a 3rd, it's going up to the 5th. It's like a G major. I'm thinking of a G major here, right? And what is a relative minor? Good. It's an E minor. And if I do an E minor, which is a relative minor of a G major, I'm gonna treat this D, which is like going through the next bar, as the 7th. So can you imagine? I'm having my 3rd, going to the 5th, but I don't let it to be sit too long on the 5th degree. And here I'm gonna treat it as minor 7th. I'm gonna go to E. And then I go to D. Why do I go to D? Because it's a stepwise nice thing, but plus I'm having a F in the melody, so I'm thinking of it as a D minor, and then going down, we are on a D. So here there are different ways of treating. We can still put it as a D minor. I think D minor can work, but there are also other harmonies that we can think of. We can think of F6. F6 is literally like F major with a 6. And what is the 6? Is a D. Because we are having the D in the melody, so we can have F6. We can have sort of F6, but with the 3rd in the bass. That's also possible. So we are going to have the A in the bass. Why I'm going to do A in the bass is because I think with the F is going to be too bright. But with A, we are still getting that kind of major feeling, but with a less exposed major F major feeling. You know, when the 3rd is in the bass, things can work differently. Because I'm also thinking about some inner voices here that might be something like A minor-ish here. Maybe I would treat this as an A minor because I'm having a C, but in the inner voice, treat the second violins here as playing the melody in a 6 below, let's say. And why would I do it is because, like the 6th interval is really nice, really solid, sounding of the melody, especially once you want to do on the second violins. And if I do it Here you can see that if I choose A, then I can define also this very precisely as A minor. And also I can define this as F6, or D minor or F6, having D, F, and C and A in the bass. But at the same time, I can treat this here well as a A minor. Of course, I can also go with an F to treat this as a root, as a major seventh, as a root, right? It's also possible. It might be a matter of taste. I still do not know about it, but from now, what I'm assuming is that so far I'm thinking that I just do an A. Maybe we can also try the F. Why not? Let's just try the F also, so you can see how it's gonna sound, and then we can always change. As you can see, the F is working. These are working beautifully, as I can play for you here. So now you see what I mean when I say I have something in mind. Let's put it as F for now, but I might come to an A later, but let's keep it as F. Here I would come to a C. Why do I come to C? Is because, I want to have the most effect and tension between the bass and the melody. So if it's coming to an E, I would definitely come to a C to make it as a third, like thinking that way. Because that's how you can like make sure that, because most of the time people are hearing the melody and the bass, because bass is defining whatever is happening, and people's ear first hear the melody and then the bass is being perceived somehow. Though the bass is very deep, they may not hear it like in a distinctive way, but most probably they always gonna feel the relation between the bass and the melody. That's why it's very important in the beginning you really think of melody and the bass first, and then try to fill up the like a mid-range, and think about all the possibilities that you can have. Anyway, so here is a C. What I can do here, the safest way to approach here can be a D, because we are having a C, and then the B, and then the C, or we can come to an A. Let's hear what's gonna happen if you come to an A, all right? The A makes it too dark. What if we go to the D? So we treat this as the minor seventh. I don't like it personally. What if we come to F? The F works great with this, but since there is a repetition, right? What if, because here we are already having the D, right? So I can go up and make it D. So let's say like, like not to make it boring, they play D and then they play an octave higher and then they go to C and then they come to F. Because we tried the D, it doesn't feel right. We tried the A, it doesn't feel right. But the F was feeling right. So I can keep on the F here, but it's gonna be a repetition of two chords, which I don't like. So maybe we can try with D and see what's gonna happen. So you can see the D is because the melody is also in D, and then the bass also comes in D. It really doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make that kind of color. So what if because here we tried F, D, A, right? So the F is working the best. What if here we come to an A? Let's give it a try and see how A is gonna sound. So as you can see, the A works the best. We tried F, F worked, but since F is working 100% here, if we have it here, it's going to be boring because it's going to be F, C, F. So we tried D because the melody is going to the D. It's not going to make any sense. But once we're having A, it gives it a character, right? Because it's a fourth degree coming to the third. So you're having that tension, spice, and then resulting in a third ending. So let's give it a listen again. So what to do here? Let's try G and see how it works. It sounds too bright. I don't like that. Let's try E. What if we stick to the F? Sounds boring. What if we go to D? D works very well. What I'm thinking here is what's gonna happen if I treat this A as kind of a little bit of a sus4. So what I mean by that is because what I'm hearing here is like, but also in the inner voice, what I'm hearing is something like this. You know what I mean? It's like having that kind of 4 to 3 to major 3 resolve. This is what I have in my mind. So what I'm thinking here is what if I go to E? Because then E is going to have that suspense and then resolve to E major or E7. So I'm just gonna also make an E here. This is what I'm hearing in my mind. Do you get what I mean? It's like, let's imagine with the second violins that I have assumed that I've written, but let's see how it goes. even something like that. So what I mean exactly is this part. There now is a sus4. It's the same as the G sus4 in resolve. The fourth degree in G was C resolved to B. Here in E7, let's imagine this is an E7, right? So in this part, which we can call it an E or E7, let's say, if you want to treat it as a dominant. We are having a sus before, which is the same bass and gets resolved. So in E, if you want to have an E sus, is E, A, and B. But here we are also having a C that we can treat it as the sharp 5. What is the sharp 5? I'm gonna tell you. In the E7, which is under the category of the dominant chords, the B is the fifth degree. So if you raise the fifth degree by half step, which is a sharp, is gonna be a C. So this is kinda like E7 sus4 sharp 5. This is the way that we are treating this, because it can also come to a flat 9, or like we can have a D underneath. It all depends on how you're gonna treat that dominant chord. All the sus chords, we can put them in a dominant category, and you get all of your altered chords and altered voicings. Later I might explain about them, but as I said, the way that I'm seeing and hearing it is, let's make a sus4, which is an A, and it resolves to the third, to the major third. It's same as here. So theme is going the same way, kinda is going to the same way. So that's why I want to have the same kind of sus4 character of the chord in this part. So long story short, I don't want to make it too complex for you for now. This is what I think is gonna be good for now. So we did the bass here again for violoncello. You may ask, when am I gonna use the contrabasses? I will, but I'm thinking to use them later. Why do I want to use them later? Is because you don't want to bring out all of your instruments, from the beginning. Otherwise, you don't have anything more to play with, right? You want to still keep an element of surprise somewhere in the piece, that low end enters and changes everything. All right, let's listen to the first violins and the cello for now, bass and melody. And then in the next episode, we're going to dive in and fill up the inner voices and maybe the contrabass. Thanks for watching. To make the video short as always, I'm gonna end it here and I'll see you on the next part. Thank you.